graph and do stats by hand in addition to Excel is because while technology is a great thing, sometimes with students they get lost in the fact as to how things happen or why they happen the way they do. We didn't always have Excel. We didn't always have stats programs. There's been a lot of work that's been done into understanding the math behind the data that they have. So we have them work with it by hand and in Excel, so that way they can learn the tools that they'll need for college, but they're still getting the basis for the math. I actually talked to one of the math teachers here, and they suggested doing it that way, just so that way that process isn't lost on the students. The other thing that allows students to do is to see how their T-stat that they did by hand still leads them to the same conclusion that they get from Excel. So it's not like the computer is this magic answer that just pops something out. You can get it another way. So that's one of the reasons that I do that. I feel it's important that they learn it. This year, the reason why we did both is we're transitioning students into how to understand Excel. That's a new component that's been added, and we're going to continue to incorporate that over the next couple of years.
There are many online shortcuts that are useful tools for students. Dictionary.com may be helpful for students when they are writing a lab report and they come across an unfamiliar word, such as analyze, infer, or contrast. It's as simple as typing in the word, then the website generates definitions, different ways to use the words, and similar words.
Talk about the difference between using technology to help us learn and using technology as a cheat. And I'm going to do so by using two different websites. The first one I'm going to use is EasyBib. I'm sure a lot of us have used it. It's an MLA generator. It also does APA and Chicago citations. I'm going to go to book, and the only thing I really need to get this entire citation is the ISBN number, which is on the back of the book above the barcode. Wuthering Heights is the book I chose, so select, create citation. There it is. Everything I needed to know. And I can just copy and paste it onto my bibliography page. I didn't learn anything by doing that. Nothing at all. So I'm going to go to a different website where you can learn about MLA citations, which is the OWL at Purdue. Clicking on MLA. This whole website teaches you everything you need to know about MLA, formats, different types of citations, how to cite tables, figures, and examples. But right now we're just going to books. And we're going to look at this. We're doing a book with one author. The book is Wuthering Heights. It was written by Emily Bronte. I'm going to copy and paste the basic format so that I know exactly what is expected of me. Then all I need to do is open up my book to the copyright page, and I know Bronte. Now, if I delete this after I have these two sites, you can see they're basically the same. Wuthering Heights is supposed to be italicized, and it's not in the one from OWL. Also, the ISBN said that it was printed in Toronto, and it was actually, according to my book, printed in New York. Now, these things are little, but by doing the OWL at Purdue, I didn't have it just generated for me. I know exactly what each line of information means. And the more you do that, the more you work with MLA from going to the OWL at Purdue, the more you learn about it, the less you need to look at the OWL at Purdue. If you use EasyBib, you will always need to use EasyBib.
Netbooks at our school are a unique experience for students. Every kid has their own netbook. There's advantages and disadvantages. Advantages for students as far as organizing and taking notes, access to classwork, paperless assignments is really a nice thing. It helps save the environment, saves money on costs. They can share documents with each other through things like Google Docs. Everything is technology-based, or most things are technology-based when you go to a university setting, so it gives them experience in data file management along the way. Some of the programs that we use for our classes are really good. I know our math classes use something called Sketchpad for geometry. We use a platform called Blackboard, which a lot of teachers use to organize their class information. You can assign quizzes and tests in there, which are all really big advantages. The access to information for students for projects is great. They can do a lot more independent thinking. Disadvantages are all the other things that are available on computers, things like games, social media sites. They can be a distraction for some students. Younger students, you'll see a tendency for this more than older, I think, because they aren't mature enough to handle it. It also increases things like bullying. The more access students have to social media, even though there are blocking things put on our netbooks, students find their way around it. So we have to be a little bit more careful for those things, and it creates a unique management setting for some kids.
Digital readers are something that have been becoming more popular over the past couple of years, and I think that's really unfortunate. I don't think that having a digital reader means that you're going to actually read more than if you had actual books, and I think that's kind of one of the marketing tools. If you have a digital reader, it's at your fingertips and you can always just read more, and I don't think that's accurate. I think if you're going to read, you're going to read no matter what. And a piece of technology isn't going to fix that. I also think that there's something different about holding a book and highlighting it, writing in the margins, than looking at a screen and reading a book. Because when you look at a screen, we're kind of trained to skim over the words. We do it on Facebook, we do it on Twitter. We're not kind of absorbing every single word like we would if we were reading a book, which is why I think that Nooks are not beneficial to have in the classroom, especially because most of them have access to the internet, and I let them have laptops, and there's computers in the room, and they probably all have their phones out underneath their desk texting, and I'm not giving them another source of technology with which they can be distracted from in my classroom. If they have a physical book in their hands, I know that they're reading. Now, I'm going to talk about another reason why I hate Nooks, or Kindles or whatever, and most of it has to do with this book. It's called Wuthering Heights. It's my favorite book. Every time I see a new edition, a new copy, I buy it. I have about 15 copies of Wuthering Heights. And I'm weird, and that's excessive, and not many people do that. But I do it because I want to have as many different editions as I possibly can of this book. And when you have a Nook, you don't have the same options for editions, and I feel like you just buy the first one, and you kind of miss out because every edition of a book, especially a classic, you get a little something different, and you can have introductions by people, and they shed their own light on the novel, and I think that's important to read and to know about. And finally, I think that having a library is important, and I am building a library. I buy books a lot, and if my Nook broke and I lost all those books, it would be devastating. Now, a fire could kill all of my books too, but I feel like technology breaks a heck of a lot more often than than a house catches a fire. So I would rather have a physical book than read it on a piece of technology. I'm going to talk about how technology can aid in our teaching, and I say aid in teaching because We don't want to let technology do the teaching for us. I'm going to show you a YouTube video by John Green. He did a thing called Crash Course, in which he did different analyses of several different novels, including Romeo and Juliet, poems by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, and The Great Gatsby. Now, if you don't know who John Green is, he's a very well-known author. He wrote Looking for Alaska, The Fault in Our Stars, Paper Towns, and An Abundance of Catherines. These videos like these are great to show students, I think, as a review day. Maybe they've taken the test on The Great Gatsby tomorrow, and I want to give them an 11-minute crash course video. This is what the themes are. This is what Gatsby's about. And I will show them something like this.
Go to some awesome parties at Gatsby's house on West Egg. And even though Gatsby has the annoying habit of saying old sport all the time and trying to sound upper crusty, he's totally charming. He has a smile that makes you feel he is irresistibly prejudiced in your favor, to quote Nick. The first party at Gatsby's house also contains, despite being set during Prohibition, the greatest drunk driving scene in the history of American literature, in which a guy gets in an accident like 3 seconds after getting into his car, and even though the wheel has fallen off the car, he keeps trying to drive it. To Fitzgerald, that had become the American dream by the 1920s. Everyone wanted enough money to buy fancy cars and enough whiskey to crash them.
Now, The Great Gatsby is an extremely complex novel. But what we learned in that 30-second clip is that this novel is about abundance of wealth and the American dream, all of which crash and burn at the end.
Interactive games are helpful tools that can demonstrate activities that cannot be done within the classroom. This game allows students to go through the process of determining a patient's blood type by drawing the patient's blood and observing how it reacts with 3 different antibodies. Once the student determines the blood type of the patient, they can then transfuse additional blood into the patient based upon what the patient can receive. This simulation gives students a chance to actively engage with the content and use their knowledge in a virtual situation.
High school and you finish reading a play or a novel, you'd walk up to your teacher the next day and say, "Are we going to watch the movie today?" Well, watching the movie in class is a very good use of technology. It's so important, in fact, that it is a Common Core standard. Multi-act plays need to be given to students both written and in film. Being that this is a Common Core standard, the most common use of this is with Romeo and Juliet for our freshmen. Now, when you're a freshman, you're probably being exposed to Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare for the first time. This language is difficult, it is archaic, and it is reading poetry, which is not something you're used to. When we're used to reading poetry in short bursts, but Shakespeare play is lines and lines of poetry. In fact, when Romeo and Juliet meet for the first time, they only say 14 lines to one another. It's 14 lines, 144 syllables. It is a perfect sonnet. Shakespeare does this very specifically. He is writing poetically. This language, they're not used to it, so having it seen is a lot easier to make and understand than just reading it. But to be frank and give it thee again, and yet I wish, but for the thing I have, my bounty is as boundless as the sea, my love as deep the more I give to thee. This is not something we're used to reading or even hearing, but when we see it, we can have our novel or our play in front of us, and we can learn something.
Deny thy father, and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak?
'Tis but thy name that is my enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague.
Juliet here is talking about how her family's quarreling is causing the rift between her and Romeo. And Romeo, this is the balcony scene where he comes and, sweeps her off her feet. Now, when you're reading this, you don't there's no picture in your head, there's no action, it's just someone saying words, but by seeing it, all of those things come together in your head and you begin to understand the language.
Photo voice is a method by which educators provide cameras for students so that they can document issues that are important to them. This allows students to address the issues from their point of view, also offering them a new and reflective way to perceive the science around them. Allowing students to take photos of their surroundings helps them connect with the material and supply subjects that are interesting to them. Photo voice gives students an outlet for their observations and a way to portray their findings.